Welcome back to the Hurdle Rate. I'm Tim Kotzman. For episode 27, we have Matt Cole, Jeff Walton, Ben Workman, and lots going on this week between anticipated rate cuts, the Unconference here in New York City, Strive, lots of action on your end. I don't know if Matt or Jeff, you want me to throw it over to you guys and try to sort through everything that's going on in the market today, including the newest buy from Strategy.
Yeah, well, let's do it. I think the Strive stuff's probably the easiest, just because it's probably less discussion and just it's super exciting. And Jeff and I really haven't slept for about a week. We've been super busy racing to the start line. We're now at the start line and announced that we closed our merger on Friday. Publicly traded company, ASST, as many people know. And, today we made an announcement that I was super pumped about, and is that we announced our board. And for a normal company, a board might be a normal announcement, but our board is really special. And I mean that in a legitimate way. We had our first unofficial meeting last week, and it was unofficial because the transaction hadn't closed yet, but just the energy and the chemistry in the room of these individuals, and just to kind of go through some of the names and maybe just like a couple sentences on perspectives that they bring. So first we have Sharish from Strategy, the corporate treasurer. And so you think about, what do you want from a Bitcoin treasury strategy board? You want people with experience that are going to bring a unique perspective. And here you have someone that literally built the plane as they're flying. And there's a lot of learnings. They've obviously done most things right in a major way, and that's why they have the balance sheet they have, but they've also had a lot of learnings in there, and to have that perspective in the room has just been invaluable. And then you have a bunch of massive Bitcoiners and Bitcoin treasury advocates, including Ben Workman. Jeff Walton's an observer, which doesn't mean he just sits in a seat in the corner, like someone said. But really, like the concept here is like almost like a Knights of the Round Table of let's bring the best group of people in a room, and then let's debate things. And then when we debate things, the vote most often will just be a formality of the discussion that will align on things through discussion. Not that we're already going to go in there knowing what we're going to do, but we're going to have that discussion. And so just obviously Jeff and Ben being leaders early to the strategy trade and really explaining that to the masses in a major way, and kind of the, what all of you guys have done through True North, and really that concept of, people that have great professional backgrounds, but really just, shorting credentialism and longing meritocracy. You guys have proved yourself to be true leaders in the space, and, pumped to have you guys in the room and part of this. And Pierre Richard, OG Bitcoiner, massive expert in accounting and finance, and runs the Bitcoin bond company. And you think about, the need for fixed income instruments in this. James Lavish, just a absolute expert in all things macro and everything that's going on in the world. We have another board member named Mahesh, who's, I would say, brings a really interesting perspective, high agency of how Bitcoin's being used beyond just the Bitcoin ecosystem and Bitcoin treasury companies, and just a really, really smart guy. Then we have a guy, John Macy, who literally wrote the book on corporate governance. And so you think about, and he's a Yale professor, and you think about, just people calling these things scams or not understanding it. And you bring the guy that wrote the book on governance and put him in the room, kind of in a great way, the gray haired voice that, was advising other S&P 500 companies. He comes into this novel space and is all about it. And then, we round it out with a bunch of the Strive executive team. I myself as chair, Ben as CFO, Logan our CLO, Arshia our CMO. And it's just a really fun, smart, high agency group of guys. And then, also got Ovik Roy, who's, Ovik was our first guest on the Hurdle Rate pod. Amazing high agency thinker in all things, freedom, healthcare, Bitcoin, you name it. And it's just, you couldn't ask for a better group of people to start our board, and just people I look forward to getting together with this group. And I think that chemistry is going to be contagious and helpful for us to achieve our goals. So, that's our board. And then lastly, we laid out a bunch of our initial Bitcoin treasury strategy. But I think just one highlight on that, because I think it's interesting with regards to what we talk about here a lot with strategies preferred is we did actually formally announce ambitions to launch perpetual preferred equity offering this year. So we came under the gate hot. We raised a lot of capital, but we had no debt. We still have no debt, and that's never the goal here. But I think we have a very unique structure with our Wixie shelf that we announced today, which is an unlimited shelf that allows for things like publicly registered offerings of perpetual preferred equity securities, along with other things like an ATM or repurchase program. And so that's something that is going to be a focal point for the team and a goal. And so we announced that ambition, and it's a real ambition. So that's to me one of the things that I'm most excited about is imagine, obviously on the common equity side, the amplified Bitcoin of a structure, if we were able to get that live of preferred equity only, but then also on the credit side, those are super attractive instruments, and I love the concept of Strive yield. So on both sides, it's something that the team is working hard on and executing this year.
Yeah, it's the opportunity and the creation of a volatility profile that doesn't currently exist in the market in the United States, and that's incredibly exciting. It's really exciting to be a part of that. And to your point on the board, if we're going on a journey into a little bit of the unknown, right? The strategies leading the space, and they're clear leaders in that perspective. But creating this board is effectively providing like defense for any possible scenario or circumstance that you could come upon into this journey into the unknown. So it's great. Everybody's got different perspectives and different backgrounds and different expertise. So to the extent that we need to pivot or make decisions, you've got all these people in the room that can make high level decisions and debate them very strategically. I think the other thing that's very important is that every single person was debated and thought about and selected very specifically for their role. It's not just picking random people out of a hat for board members. So this is which is in line with everything that Strive has done so far, very thoughtful and strategic all the way through. So I'm incredibly excited. Mahesh flew from Turkey to Northern Idaho last week, and it just still blows me away. He showed up. He's like, "Yeah, I left Turkey like a day ago."
He didn't tell me. He said, I'm really busy. I'm going to make it. And then he comes in and he's like, it's been a long day. I came from Turkey to New York to Northern Idaho. Like, dude, like you didn't have to make it. He's like, I'm not going to miss this. Like that's kind of the energy that was there. It was great.
Yeah. And it was really great to get, the majority of the team together. Cause the one thing that stands out, and one thing that you always wonder about when everyone looks at these boards and the composition of these boards is you go, how much discussion actually happens in the room, right? Are the people on these boards really willing to speak up and share opinions? And I think that's one of the things that makes this board incredibly unique, is that you've got people that are highly accomplished from a variety of backgrounds, but every single one of them is willing to speak up on nearly any topic. And I think that that's a huge value add. I mean, there's going to be lots of discussions where you might not have consensus right out of the gate, and you're going to have the hard conversations. And having that background and that different thought process from each person is going to be just an absolutely huge asset to this board. So I'm honored to be a part of it. I mean, I couldn't think of a better group of people to be on a board with. And I think that this is setting up for a really long journey to create a lot of long-term value for shareholders.
There's one thing that's not going to be debated. I already know that's our conviction on Bitcoin for the Treasury strategy. Most other things, I think there will be a lot of debate, but the conviction of that was also key in board composition, and you just to go away from Strive and to what we see in corporate America. Why do corporations not adopt a Bitcoin Treasury strategies? It's often because there's no way the board would allow it. It's not in their mandate. It's too risky. You have to very carefully design a board, and part of it's the chemistry of a board that I was really trying to do. I mean, we had so many great candidates. I mean, there's a lot of people that we talked to that aren't on the initial board. I mean, just super talented people, but it's in the sense that you're kind of building a sports team. the front line here, and you need a basketball, you need a point guard, you need a shooting guard, you need a power forward, you need a center. You just need different people. And I'll just say that, I was so impressed with some of the conversations that we had, even with people that, at least are not on the board for now. And it just kind of really speaks to what I think we're going to be able to build as a company, both with our structure, the executive team, and the board. So we are pumped to be at the start line. It's it's just the start for what we'll achieve over the next couple of years.
You want to talk a little bit, Matt, about what the last week's been like for you? I mean, there's not a lot of times where people go through these types of transactions and you're getting a company public and out of the gate, and as you say, out of the gate into the starting line, right? You feel like a lot of the hard work's behind you, but then you realize you just made it to the starting line. What was that last week like for you in your seat?
Yeah, so the first part is getting ready, everything you need to do to actually close a merger. And so you see these massive filings that are multi-hundred page filings with all this stuff that, from the perspective of, is it going to increase Bitcoin per share? Like a lot of these things, not really, but they're administrative items that just require hundreds of hours of work. And so it was everything from auditors on both sides. So Strive as a company that was not merged in as a publicly traded company yet. So on the other side of the aisle from asset entities, even though we have a great relationship, like we each are fiduciaries to our own shareholders until last Friday, right? And so making sure that we do right, each of us, for our own shareholders, having board meetings with each of our boards, the Strive board, which is a great board of, early stage investors that are not deep in the Bitcoin space, but great people, and informing them of kind of what we're doing. Same on the asset entity side. Within Strive, I mean, there's about 100 investors in Strive, and they invested in an ETF asset management business. And I met with every single one of them, or I almost met with I offered a meeting with every single one. I almost met with every single one of them. So one-on-one meetings of like, hey guys, let me walk you through the journey of why we went here, for someone that now has exposure to Bitcoin. And I'll tell you that of them, we were probably about 98% that were pumped about it, that were some form of, I've been following this, I love what you guys have been doing, to I'm pumped to have Bitcoin exposure. I'm just very positive messages, but that investor relations component of it's really important to make sure that people understand what they're invested in, understand how to think about it, understand the opportunity. And then, over the weekend, and we made obviously a big announcement with our board. So over the last week, and it was meeting with the board. It's been, locking down all the private financing. So, sometimes private financings don't close. And so it's easy to say, oh, we made this announcement and the money is coming in. Yeah, I mean, for us as an example, we announced the financing in May. And so you go 4 months without talking to investors, and the conference say, hey guys, ready to collect the money. There's a lot of, making sure that works, making sure that from the trading perspective, the custody perspective, all those different things, that they're all in place, that when we hit go, we're ready to operate with every single strategic option on the table. Getting ready to issue, an at the market offering, a repurchase offering, like those things, even though they're common in this space, they're a lot of work. So as an example, one of the things that our counsel told us is that they've never seen a company go live with a shelf registration on day one of the closing of a reverse merger, that it typically takes 1 to 2 weeks. We did it day one. But all of these different things, I mean, the whole team, the core team, I mean, they really haven't hardly slept for a week. And I think that, it's what it's really given me conviction in is you do need a small team here. That if you have one individual or two individuals, that even if you can get across the line, you're just going to drop so many balls with regards to running a publicly traded company, running a Bitcoin Treasury strategy, all the different decisions that have to be made and thought about, that it really does require not a huge team, but a small team of highly talented individuals. And so it's been quite the journey so far. Anything to add, Jeff? I mean, you've been at the front seat of this, watching this all too. And
yeah, honestly, Matt, I've been incredibly impressed with your executive decision-making skills. Just the amount of information that you have to consume and be able to make a high level decision on very quickly, especially when you're trying to move fast, there's just so much information. I'm trying to put it in perspective. I just went through the process of buying and selling a house. Imagine, for those that have bought a house, imagine that process, that painstaking process, and multiply it by 200. And that's probably the process equivalent of what the process is like of closing this reverse merger. The amount of communication between the legal teams and laboring over individual sentences, how they're communicated, how filings work, getting ready for all of the filings, getting ready for the communication, getting the communication approved by the legal teams, editing the communication, passing it around through the teams, like all of the capital actually coming in the door, the plumbing and the pipes and the infrastructure behind the scenes. I mean, to your point, Matt, you need a team. Being able to, like, if there were one or two people, this would just never get done. It would take a year and a half. And I think there's a reason a lot of these deals take a lot longer than that, because they're tricky. They're hard. There's a lot of energy and time and effort that goes into it on all fronts. This team has just been operating on 110% capacity for the last, since I've joined. It's just been go, 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 like every single day up until it's still so ongoing.
And the last thing I'll say about this, as we're at the start line here, is, as we evolve, you can expect, more and more frequent updates and transparency. But just look at, if you just rewind just a little bit, kind of what Metaplanet went through when they went through their quiet period. Why did they go through their quiet period? Because they were doing something really big. And not that anything that we do is going to be exactly the same as them, but I'll just say that one of the learnings is when you're really going fast and you're really aiming high, that if you're doing the highest value add things, it's very likely that you can't communicate those things in real time. Just as a general statement, like if you see me issuing what I did this week, it's probably because I don't have much going on. And I don't mean it as like a slight. It's just the reality in dealing as like a public market CEO and executive team. If you're working on, really transformative things in the public markets, you really can't do more than signal the intentions and the desire of where you want to go. And then people have to use their imagination. They have to read the press release, read the public communications, read every word, read the words carefully. Like those words are crafted to tell you exactly what the company is trying to do. They're intended to be, disclosure, but not too much disclosure to inhibit our ability to execute our mission. And I just say that because I want this team to be the high performance engine. That the common equity is truly amplified Bitcoin, that it's truly differentiated, and that, you look at strategy, you look at Metaplanet, and you look at Strive, and you say, okay, these guys, they move fast, they execute, and they say what they're going to do. And if you can see, if I telegraph it too much, that would mean that we're not doing much. So anyways, I just say that because I think it's an important thing as we come out the gate hot, and we get to where we hopefully can get to pretty quickly.
The piece about from a few minutes ago about Bitcoin only, to Bitcoiners, they might be like, yes, that's awesome. I get it. We're all on the same page. And some people be like, why are you still covering this? But I remember stories of people, and stories that I've been told, people that have been around for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And in past cycles, right, they're a public figure and there's someone that is approached and it's like, oh, well, no, I'm not going to take a bunch of money to go promote something that's not Bitcoin. And even now, right, like some of us, maybe just myself, right, I see emails, I see proposals, and it's like, this DAT, digital asset treasury, may include the following. And I've sent text to people, I'm like, I don't even need to have a conversation if it's something that includes something other than Bitcoin. So it might sound super simplistic and like the Bitcoiners are like, yeah, we get it, you can move on. But there's someone out there that'll listen to this and say, oh, okay, well that makes sense that, until you understand Bitcoin and appreciate Bitcoin, it is a big deal, and it is something that should be talked about. And it's a real thing out there in the market. So just thought I'd touch on that for a moment.
Yeah, that term DAT has come out of nowhere. It's spread like wildfire. It just appeared one day, and now everybody's just using the acronym. Let's DAT this, DAT that, digital asset treasury. That's yeah, pretty interesting. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, in free markets, you've got room for every approach, and people are going to get to pick whatever token it is that they want to use. From my perspective, I look at these treasury companies and I look at Bitcoin in particular and go, if I've found the asset that I think solves one of the foundational problems that impacts everybody in the world, that's what I want to build around. Right? Everyone else is fighting for these niche use cases and they're trying to figure out how this plugs into an ecosystem and you're coming up with, fancy marketing terms to try to get people really excited about them. But when you say the words inflation and monetary debasement, people know what that means. They see it every day when they go to the grocery store. They understand that this is a problem that they face. And so, as a company, if you have the opportunity to build on that and to bring new products to the market that meet people's needs that are enabled by the power of that asset and the very meticulous design of that asset to fight the biggest problem that everyone's facing today, which is only accelerating. To me, as a company, that's where you want to focus. What is the addressable market? And I think, Jeff, this might have been a post that you made that was from Sailor where you said, what is the addressable market of capital,
Capital.
right? Well, or what's capital worth? Half of everything in the world,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's a huge opportunity. And because of that, you've got to really focus on, do I have a large enough addressable market where I think I can go out there and make a really significant difference? And with Bitcoin, the answer to that is unequivocally yes. And that's why it's, the most exciting time to be involved in this space because we're on the very front edge of this. I know Strategy's been at this for 5 years. Obviously, Saylor was a visionary. He spotted this before anybody else and realized the power of the corporate balance sheet to be able to make all of this possible. But this is so early still. And there's so much work to be done. And there's a huge amount of brain power that's going in to trying to structure the right products to meet the needs of the market. And this means that you've got the opportunity to bring the benefits that Bitcoin affords to normal people, where it's really going to impact their lives, even if they're not investors in Bitcoin. You might be able to put out a product that resonates to them that's made possible by Bitcoin. So yeah, I mean, those you're seeing a lot of different terms coming out that did just jump out of nowhere. And, a lot of it's going to be marketing, but you have to ask yourself, what is the use case of this asset and what is that addressable market? And do I believe that that asset provides enough opportunity that I want my companies capitalized on it? And
Yeah.
that's a harder question for a lot of these to answer.
Yeah. Equities are exuberant. So when there's a shiny new object in the market, I think like what we've seen with these ETH treasury companies, it seems like maybe some of the premium in the Bitcoin treasury companies has gone to ETH treasury companies, and now it'll probably go to Solana treasury companies and these other, little. It's just kind of like an altcoin sort of wave that's happening in these equity markets as well. And when I zoom out and I think about the landscape and the size and scale of everything that's happening here, there's only one cryptocurrency that has this access and siphon to the fixed income market, and it's Bitcoin. And if you think about where is the transformational capital going to come from to push any of these assets from, into the tens of trillions of dollars, it's going to come from the fixed income market. Like the exuberance in the equity market, I think will fly around everywhere because it's fast moving capital. But where do you want to be long term? It's the place that's going to be able to access the larger pools of capital. If you think about, okay, well, how does the fixed income capital market think? They're thinking about risk return trade-offs. So let's just say the ETH treasury companies ended up coming out with a, perpetual preferred equity instrument or, convertible bonds, which I think they've already got. That's a different risk profile than Bitcoin. And so the interest rate charged on those instruments is going to be higher. So they're going to be less capital that's going to come in the door, depending on the relative strength and the risk profile of those different currencies. So um, I think the size, the scale, the infrastructure, the plumbing, and everything that's behind Bitcoin is going to continue to lead. And I think that just gets stronger over time as the plumbing gets tighter, and you've got all of these brilliant minds working in the same direction.
Just say quickly, to me, the biggest advantage to the concept of a treasury company is the long duration that you can take on the corporate balance sheet to match the long duration asset on the other side. And Bitcoin is a long duration asset, and the longest duration asset you could have. There's no income to it. And so it just is a perpetually super long duration asset. It's why when you zoom out, you look at 4-year returns and there's never a negative return, but you zoom in and it's super volatile. Well, if you think about a Bitcoin, any crypto treasury company, for me to invest, I'd want to feel comfortable. I could put my money in there, fall asleep for 5-10 years and wake up and feel like it's likely going to be there and it's likely going to be worth more. And I think even if you were to challenge digital asset treasury investors with that, almost all of them would say, oh no, I wouldn't invest in name your DAT and sleep for 5 years. And I think that's where the market still has a lot of maturing to do and understanding of what these can be as investment vehicles. So specifically Bitcoin treasury companies, but there's still too much emphasis of the investor on what is it going to do next week or next month, where when you think about like the structure of amplified Bitcoin on one hand, perpetual preferred equity, never repay the capital on the other, that is a long-term investment thesis that is made to play out over multiple years. It's not made to time the market over 1 week or 1 month. And I think that's where people that lack that foundation of why they're investing in these get pulled more into the digital asset treasuries and even Wall Street bankers. Because it's like, well, name your cryptocurrency. We can stake it and it'll lock up the supply. And for every dollar impact, we could pump the price up of the cryptocurrency more. And then, but it's like, okay, like that's basically a common equity only story. Good luck putting a perpetual preferred equity instrument on that and hoping that you can pay interest payments forever into the future. Would hate to see a company try that because you know how that would end. And so it's really just short-term minded investors buying a short-term asset, in my view, in the digital asset treasuries. And do you guys know if there's a non-Bitcoin one that has a pref out there yet?
No, there's not. But I think one of the ETH treasury companies has a convert. Maybe Bitminer, Tom Lee's one.
No, the converts at least are like can be shorter term. They can convert if they can pump the price, get the price up in the near term. But the pref, you have to have a long term structural thesis, and we'll see. That'll be a fun ride. I would just from a to watch it from the sidelines, would love to see one of them have the conviction to launch one and see if any institutional investors will give them capital.
Yeah, I think that with human nature being constantly convincing yourself that you've missed out on the opportunity, right? It seems like people are constantly looking at one asset. So say it's Bitcoin and now you've watched the price, run up to 115,000. You play mental games with yourself where you convince yourself that you've missed that opportunity, right? You're already late. And so you're always looking for the next thing, right? And that's what's happening with these digital asset treasuries as well, right? There was the success of Strategy, and Strategy got all these products out there. They saw that capital was readily available. People felt like they missed those opportunities, and they might be missing the second wave of those opportunities because if you're rotating capital out of the Bitcoin space and into these, digital asset treasury space, you might just be hopping from one to the next. But if you don't have a long-term problem that you think that those companies are going to help solve, you better have a very short-term investment thesis on that company. And I think a lot of people are going to get caught on that because there's a lot of creative marketing out there, right? Marketing is what attracts a lot of capital and it attracts a lot of investors because there's a lot of shiny and polished ways to say things. But if you focus in on what is the biggest problem I would like to see solved, and you invest your capital towards the companies that are focusing on that as their strategy, I think that's one of those places where you can play the long duration. That's where you can put your capital in, go to sleep, wake up in a decade, and be pretty confident that that capital is going to be worth a lot more. You're going to gain yourself, your family, your friends, a lot more purchasing power over that decade than investing in a company that's basically pushing on top of a technology. And all the technologies are going to be ripe for disruption. And that's going to be one of the big hardships of chasing those. And I think it's going to end up burning a lot of people.
What do you guys think about Wednesday? And no, I'm not talking about the Unconference, but maybe the Unconference coupled with what many are expecting to be a rate cut. You know, there's a lot of loud voices out there saying that rates should have been cut quite a while ago. If you look at true inflation, if you look at other ways of measuring what's really going on. And what does that mean for all asset prices? I mean, the stock market's already at all-time highs. So where do you guys think we go from here? A higher?
A higher for asset prices, lower for rates. And to me, the bigger macro picture here is just what's going to play out over the next couple of years of likely job losses through AI or job weakness through AI advancements, coupled with likely not as weak of an economy as you'd think on the other side. And so because it's being met with productivity gains, and so typically when you see labor cuts or large labor cuts, it's because of a recession and people are having to do cost cutting measures. Here you're seeing job cuts with productivity gains at the same time. And so it kind of throws a wrench in most economic modeling and scenarios, and is one that should be one that generally drives prices down. So, inflation. So if you think about the Fed's dual mandate, on one hand, inflation, pretty under control. On the other hand, a weak labor market, it should mean lower rates and pretty, potentially pretty material lower rates is where I think it should go. I don't know how quick that they do that, but I think that's a macro environment that probably is fairly supportive for risk assets and particularly Bitcoin. So I think it's all hands on deck, and I think there's gonna be a little bit of change people have to work through, but ultimately I think it'll be my view is it'll be a good thing over the long run, as I think people's standard of living will rise, and hopefully people can support families with one person working is kind of the long-term view, but that's not where we start. It's going to be messy.
Well, it's also interesting that there's the rumblings of them declaring the housing crisis kind of in this same cycle. And so you've got asset prices that are already high. You've got markets that are ripping. Now you've got rate cuts coming in, and a lot of people think they're behind the ball and need to cut harder. Couple that with housing affordability and them declaring a housing crisis to try to drive down the cost on those houses. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics that are going to be at play here over the short and the midterm, but I think that Matt's right. I mean, in terms of what's the impact of this going to be on asset prices, I think it's going to push them higher quite quickly. I mean, I think Q4 here, if we don't see multiple cuts, or if we do see multiple cuts, I think you're going to see risk assets in particular start to fly.
And it's like tone too. It's not just like the cutting, it's how, if they're hawkish or dovish, how they say good afternoon and the other things that they talk about. But yeah, I mean, what was there? The largest jobs revision in history last week, like 900,000 jobs they said were there that didn't exist, which is just a massive number. And it kind of confirms the reality that everybody's been seeing in the world, right? There's been pain in a lot of different industries. A lot of people can't get jobs. They lose jobs. They can't get jobs. And yeah, I think it's starting to make a little bit more sense with what everybody's actually seeing in the real world. So yeah, hard to see a world where asset prices don't keep rising here.
It's also interesting though, when you see, I think it was 911,000 or something was the revision on the jobs numbers. But when you look at that and you start to see these revisions becoming more frequent, you have to imagine that the market's starting to wonder, what data are they using to make this decision now, right? If a lot of the data has been wrong for a very long time, where does that put them right now? Are you in this period where you still need to be a little cautious because you're trying to stabilize this and find the right data sources to give you the best chance to make the right decision? So do they wade into this like the betting markets think with a 25 basis point cut? Or do they see that job revision number and go, we're behind the 8 ball, we need to do a 50 right out of the gate? It becomes an interesting conundrum given, how volatile the data's been that they've been utilizing for so long.
I think they've known the whole time.
Okay.
I think they've known the whole time. Personally, but I don't I have no data to back that up, but I don't know. You could see it everywhere. Like you can see it in society that the numbers are wrong. Everybody's been talking about the numbers being wrong. You go look at inflation, you go look at sentiment everywhere. Everything is painful. Jobs are painful, housing prices are painful. Yeah, so I feel like they already knew. But it'll be interesting, to your point, to see how they respond to this. If it's what I think what's Bloomberg says, like 96%, 25 basis point rate cut is the probability. I think of a 50, it's like something like 10 or 15%, much lower.
I think we're up to 105% likelihood of cut.
Okay, 105.
So,
Okay.
so specifically, what
Higher.
that means, some people are pricing in a potential for 50 basis points.
Got it.
And it kind of breaks once it goes above 100%. So it doesn't actually mean 100% confidence. Obviously, it just means that some people are pricing in a 50 basis point cut.
Yeah, makes sense. It's like a weighted average.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, got it.
As fiat systems falter, wealth preservation isn't a strategy, it's survival. While the world reacts, Swan Private clients are already prepared. Swan Private builds strong relationships with clients around mutual conviction in Bitcoin's long-term promise. With concierge service, deep expertise, and airtight security, the Swan Private team helps build generational wealth the right way. Swan Private's comprehensive Bitcoin wealth platform serves over 5,000 clients with more than $4.5 billion of Bitcoin purchased to cold storage. Swan Private is built for long-term partnerships. Get started today at swan.com/private.
So Tim, now you got to talk about the biggest thing that's happening on Wednesday. Rate cuts are a
That's
nice
what I thought
sideshow,
you were
and
talking about, actually.
it's nice that they aligned that with the biggest event that's happening in New York City. But why don't you tell us where that's at?
Yeah, well, both. So this will come out Tuesday, and both Tuesday and Wednesday night, everybody that's ticketed for the Unconference is welcome to join us at Pub Key, right? The only Bitcoin bar in New York City. But yeah, Wednesday morning, doors open at 8 a.m. at Levon Midtown. The Sailor keynote will kick off at 10 a.m. And then he's conveniently on sessions right after lunch and the last session of the day. So I'll let you try to figure out why we did it that way, right? That way everyone shows up on time, and then hopefully everybody gets back from lunch on time and everybody stays until the end. So I think that'll be really unique. We're anticipating about 400 people live in the audience, live streamed out across 5 or 6 cameras. So yeah, right before we started recording this, I was in a conference room with Ed, Ted, and Adrian, and we had at one point 15 people up on the screen for a production meeting. So I think there's 33 people on the production crew if you include Adrian, give or take a dozen volunteers. So appreciate everyone participating, attending, sponsoring, volunteering, producing, whatever you're doing. Super appreciate it. And I think it's going to be, it's going to be whatever it is, but we really anticipate, we want the vibe to be kind of with everything going on in all of our lives and across the world, right? Maybe a little lighthearted, very interactive, very fun town hall sort of format where everyone on stage takes a few minutes to kind of talk through their position on the given topic, but then we're out in the audience and shoving a mic in Ben Workman's face or Tad Smith's face or, whoever wants to participate, and with commentary, with questions. I think that'll be really cool. And if you're listening to this episode, you'll know in advance we actually are going to have in the audience a 4-foot high gong. So we'll have some instructions at the beginning that, if you're going overtime and you hear the gong, you have 10 seconds to finish up before, they cut your mic. So we thought that was a very fun, interactive, and, even potentially polite way of kind of keeping things moving, because there's so many passionate people in this space, as we all know. We're 4 of them. So I think that'll be super cool. We do have reports of some very, very high profile people who may have had correspondence with Satoshi being in the audience. So I think it'll be really, really cool to have the community together. It's always cool to have the community together. I did not plan it in advance for it to be on rate cut day, which will probably be Wednesday. But I do think, it'll side events, breakfasts, other networking events, private dinners. I see a bunch of invitations flying around. People doing Bitcoin giveaways in celebration of the Unconference. I almost couldn't believe that when I saw that this morning. A lot of very fun things going on. And I was talking to someone in the office here who had an event last Friday at Levon, and she said, "You're getting Sailor for the whole day?" So, it is kind of a unique experience. Of course, a lot of the speakers do several different talks, right? Whether it's more of a smaller group versus a main stage or whatever at these different events. But I think it will be very unique to really have these conversations, have everyone who wants to participate be able to participate. It's not the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people on stage and everybody else is just listening. And as advertised, right? Sailor to actually ask some questions instead of just answering questions. I think that could be, kind of cool for everybody to hear. And appreciate everybody participating. And of course, the live stream will be going out for anyone who can't attend. So I think it'll be hopefully the first of many events where we can kind of mix it up and bring everybody together.
I think one of the coolest thing that comes out of planning something like this, and kudos to you, because this is a huge thing to pull off in a very short period of time. So it's pretty incredible work by yourself and the entire team, and I know Ed's been instrumental in that. But one of the things you really love to see is how it really spins up all the activity in the community, right? The number of side events and gatherings and get-togethers that are happening, in the days before and the days after, right after the event. It's just incredible. And it's one of those few times where people get to connect. And when you've got it down to about 400 people, what you end up with is a highly engaged group of people that really want to be there, right? This isn't a mass gathering. This is a very targeted gathering of people that are really dedicating time, energy, and capital into this space. And so I think it's really cool to see just how involved everybody gets in all the ancillary, events that are popping up here. So very cool what you guys have pulled off. Well done to the team.
Absolutely.
It's exciting that that you're running this, and it's focused on Bitcoin treasuries. And each individual topic I know was built with the help of AI. You put in topics of what's happening in the space, so it's all stuff that's incredibly relevant. And I haven't seen an agenda like it before. So major kudos to you guys on the development of the agenda too, because and the people that are attending saw the agenda, and that's what they want to see and talk about. So it's going to be like a laser focused conference as opposed to a large scale gathering of all walks of life that are interested in Bitcoin. So really excited about that focused nature of it. But it will probably be a lot like the Bitcoin Investor Week. I think what was that, in February or April earlier this year. And that was a great time. It was just a very focused crowd that all was speaking the same language, and I'm excited to experience that on a little bit broader level here. So good work.
Same. I'm also looking forward to deconstructing the Fed news live with the conference with a bunch of smart people. That's going to be fun.
Yeah. Absolutely. We did put in the notes on the Luma invite and in the know before you go email that don't party too hard tomorrow night, Tuesday night, because doors open at 8, and that's kind of the sweet spot for networking is going to be kind of the 8 to 10 a.m. There will be one other short break, but it's going to be kind of back to back with the exception of lunch. So, but plenty of time to network, but not long drawn out periods. And I think it'll be super successful from the aspect of the networking. I can't imagine that people are traveling from France, Australia, the UAE, Asia, like just to watch something they could watch on a live stream. In fact, one of the guys in the office today said, "Oh, really? You're going to live stream it? Wouldn't that kind of like deter in-person attendance and like ticket sales?" And I'm like, I don't know. I guess it doesn't, right? But it's like, it kind of goes back to that networking part where I don't think, actually, I do know people who are coming just because they've never seen Michael Saylor do a presentation in person, and they're very excited to see it. But certainly for other people, it's the networking and getting in front of whoever your audience is.
Yeah, there's a massive difference between watching something and being in the room and participating in something. I think the value you take away is 10x from being in the room, having the conversations. And some of the most valuable conversations, like you said, might be during that early networking session, right? I mean, the topics that get discussed, before the events when everyone's just casually talking are equally as interesting as everything that happens on the stage, because you do get a lot of people that are very behind the scenes, that aren't very well known publicly and aren't trying to be, who are there, that are doing some really incredible things in the space. So there's a lot of value to being there in person and being able to participate in something like this.
Very first conference, Bitcoin conference I went to, I realized immediately, oh my gosh, I need to work in this space. And meeting the people in person, and I got to see like the business side of it and the business like back end, and it's not just this like crypto cult. Like there's actually tons of people that are working and pushing the world forward behind the scenes in different ways. So just completely fascinating. You never know who you'll meet or rub shoulders with and have conversations with. So yeah, I highly recommend it.
Maybe close this out with some options on the press, Jeff.
Oh yeah,
you were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, that's just so options were announced and released on the strategy perpetual preferred equities. I haven't looked at the options chain really to see like how they're moving or how they're operating. We're still in week 1, so I think we'll see how this develops and evolves. But it's an interesting evolution in these securities, because now if you're long the credit quality, you could take leveraged exposure to the market reflecting an improved credit quality of these different instruments. So it's just an interesting element to have in your portfolio, and I'm curious to see like how they're priced. I still need to do some analysis to see if I think there's alpha there, because I mean everybody on the screen here thinks that the perpetual preferred equities are likely undervalued by the market. It's just a question of whether or not the market reflects the true risk profile in a short enough period of time for that to be a valuable position to take. But it also provides liquidity on both sides for any market makers that are, hedging or making any of the exposure work either way.
It's going to continue to move in the direction of these really should trade at a liquidity discount versus liquidity premium, because in the fixed income and just income space at large, the liquidity profile of these preferreds relative to anything in income space is just unheard of. And the options chain, that's just not something that exists in traditional income CUSIPs. And so to me, that's what initially just struck me, is like, wow, these things, we were already talking about how liquid these are. This is only going to deepen the liquidity profile of these instruments. And then even if you had equivalent liquidity, we would likely all agree that these things from a credit perspective are underpriced. And I don't even think people have started to even think about a liquidity discount or what that means for assets that have less of a liquid profile. Maybe it needs to get a little bit more institutionalized, a few more institutional buyers that really care about liquidity, for that to be a more frequently discussed thing. But yeah, these will provide that for sure. I'm looking forward to seeing what some of our quant girlfriends come up with on structures that they can put in place with options on perpetual preferred equity instruments. I'm sure there'll be some interesting ones.
I mean, what's the most fascinating about this is it just puts one more tool out there for investors to customize with, right? So the ability to go and capture arbitrages and put out structured trades and do all kinds of things now is going to make this just a bigger and bigger playground for investment capital, right? When the opportunities expand, people get real creative. And I think as soon as liquidity comes into the options market here, you're going to start seeing a lot of people start talking about that. They're going to find creative ways to take advantage to that leveraged exposure on these preferreds and find new ways to, find value out of all the products that strategy is offering. Now, people don't give them nearly enough credit for how deep their product offering is now in terms of trading vehicles. I mean, that is pretty impressive, particularly given that this year was really the big year for a lot of it, right? Yeah, you had convertible bonds and you had common equity, but since these preferreds have come out, now you're getting derivatives on the preferreds. I mean, they're creating a place for pretty deep pools of institutional capital to come and put on a lot of really creative styles of trades here in the Bitcoin space. So it's going to be cool to see this evolve both with strategy and with all the new companies entering the market.
Right. Just like thinking about options on stretch in particular, you could sell covered calls at 101.5 and above. Right? If you think that they're going to peg it at 101, you're like, okay, why wouldn't I? If there's any premium there, that's a position people could take. Or you could sell puts, below 96 or whatever that may be, if you think that the market is going to continue to push it up depending on the changing interest rate at each individual month. So to your point, there's so many different creative ways that it's going to take forever for people to figure out that these even exist and that these are creative ways to generate additional return on top of these great instruments.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing, yields, you're playing credit risks, you're playing Bitcoin correlations. I mean, there's just all kinds of things that people are going to be able to do. So I think over the next, we probably look back at that in about a quarter and we see, what kind of trades have been going on out there. I think it's going to be a pretty interesting area to keep digging into as time goes on.
Yeah, this space can easily 100x because of that.
Yeah. Yep.
Like I think very easily.
Exciting times. Well, we will see everyone Tuesday night at PubKey, Wednesday night at Levon here in New York City with the after party at PubKey. And we'll see you next week here on The Hurdle Rate. For Ben Workman, Jeff Walton, Matt Cole, I'm Tim Kotzman, the guy in the orange tie. We'll see you next week.